Welcome to Fashion and the Automobile, featuring a special exhibition, The Wedding Room. Here we see our first cube. This is featuring the years 1900 through 1930. Let's take a look. On the wall is artwork by Charlie Winkler and other artisans. Here's our 1900 garment. And an exhibit of a few things that were important in 1900. Boots, collars, spats, a stereo viewer. It's always accompanied by descriptions of the cars, the fashion, and any other interesting notes for that era. Now we come to our 1910 walking suit. What the young lady of 1912 perhaps might have been wearing when she was out motoring, with a duster over it, no less. And if she went out for the evening, she would slip into something along these lines from the same era. You would have seen something like this on board Titanic. Now we're jumping into the 20s. Hemlines started going up, hats started getting closer to the head, waistlines dropped, and the ladies began to eschew their corsets. A typical daytime dress from the 20s and 30s might be this little chiffon number with a straw hat to protect her from the sun. If she went out in the evening, she might have worn a beautiful necklace along these lines, very Art Deco, and perhaps she'd have worn it with a dress like this. Beautiful satin. This is more 1930s. And again, now that we're in the 30s, there's our descriptions of each event. Let's walk into the 1940s, 1950s room. We'll start with the 40s. This is what a working woman of 1940 might have worn. Gray peplum suit, padded shoulders, and her hat. Or a more casual daytime dress. It was this houndstooth with red accents and hat. Always the hat. We have sketches and photographs of the era. And of course, World War II played a big part. Here's a gentleman's uniform and a nurse's uniform from the era, along with some collectibles, a yearbook from Southeastern High School, 1940. And if the lady was going out for the evening, she might have slipped into this beautiful number with peplum sleeves and an open keyhole back. We have more artwork. This is by DeFazio, depicting, now that we're going into the 50s. It's a beautiful little daytime polka dot dress, something Lucille Ball might have worn on her TV show I Love Lucy. More of an evening look. This lace overlay dress, tiny little bows on the lace, and a beautiful suit that she might have worn to the office if she was a working woman. Again, with the prerequisite hats. Younger ladies might have worn something in the 50s along this line. They would have added the crinoline slip, and this I call the trolley car dress. They also love their sweater sets. This one features a very rare early Walt Disney promotional item, Lady and the Tramp poodle skirt. One of the first promotional items Disney started selling. We have more artwork and a Letterman sweater from the era. And the motorcycle people might have worn this. Here's a lady's Harley cap with attached scarf, a large reflective kidney belt, and the pictures of the wearers. These are my parents. Yes, they wore this with their 1947 Harley. We also have display of items that are for the era. We have a couple of purses, tins, of course, the prerequisite bobby socks and the little camera, and a poodle skirt purse with the first Viewmaster. Well, let us go into now the 60s and 70s room. Here we have a beautiful 1960s wool suit, handmade by my mother in 1962. We have the wonderful little shift dresses that the girls would wear. Twiggy might have worn something like this. And if you were going to a wedding, you'd have dressed up something very spectacular in this lovely light blue brocade. In the exhibit, it's also featuring promotional cars. These might have been given out to the dealership. Here's a 60s dress. This is definitely something Twiggy would have worn with her rabbit fur cap, Poochie print dress, and the go-go boots. We're now deep into the 60s. A couple of purses from the era. Then when we start going into the 70s, we start going into more of the hippie peasant look. The leather purse, fringe vest, and clogs. Another 70s look might have been this prom dress from 1974. I wore this in July of 1974. There I am. Also this Carnaby Street dress, straight out of London. Definitely would have been worn with your Volkswagen microbus and your floppy hat. As always, we have artwork that goes along with the era. At this point, let us go into the 80s and 90s room. We have items indicative of the era. How about an 8-track player? There's flash dance leggings and a cut sweatshirt and disco shoes. Here's your typical disco dress with a jacket. Some of these even had handkerchief hemlines. Or you had harem pants, wider on the hips, narrower at the ankles. These are coming back now. We also have the stretch tank top dresses. Or the one-shoulder dresses as well. And when Grease hit in the mid-80s, every girl wanted the spandex pants that Sandy wore. And then Madonna paired them with a corset top, and the rest was history. If you were going out for an evening, you might have dressed up in this pretty dress with sequin shoulders. There was a Victorian revival in the 80s. Everyone was wearing lace blouses and brocade suits. And in the What's Old is New Again section, we have a paper dress handmade by an artist named Matthew Richmond. We also have jewelry here made from actual car parts. And the pièce de résistance is our wedding room. Here we show weddings through the decades. These are all privately owned. The brides themselves have donated them in many cases. We have a 1900 wedding dress, completely made of silk and lace. A gentleman's tuxedo and morning jacket with the striped trousers and, of course, the gray bowler hat. And a 1910 brocaded dress with the shoes. In the 20s, we started going to the shorter hemlines and the drop waist. Here's a silk and satin dress from 1925 with the original shoes. We've paired it with a typical beaded crown that the bride might have worn. In the 30s, they went to different fabrics. They still went with the columnish look, but the Juliet sleeve was popular then, and they added, of course, out of velvet, complete silk velvet. In 1938, a gentleman might have worn a double-breasted suit such as this. This was worn by this gentleman in this picture here, in this shadow box. This is the bride's and groom's collectibles. In 1940, satin became very popular. This bride wore this dress with this black velvet and white rabbit fur cape for a winter wedding. In 1946, bride would have worn this, completely beaded and satined. This was handmade by her mother. In 1948, we were seeing a lot of peplum and lace. There's the peplum. This has an incredibly long train. Hemlines went up in the 50s, like Grace Kelly and Liz Taylor in Father of the Bride. Here's a hoop-skirted 50s dress from 1956. And they stayed at that for 1962. We saw again the princess-type hoop skirt and billowy tulle. The 60s, the Kennedy look was in. This is something Jackie Kennedy might have worn. Empire waist, satin brocade dress with pearl collar, and bow headband. In the 70s, Victorian was in, and simple baby doll. This bride was very diminutive. This is her dress from 1972, and a typical tuxedo jacket that might have been worn in the 70s as well. The pièce de résistance is a 1987 wedding gown, very similar to what Princess Diana might have worn at her wedding in the 80s. I believe it was 81, 82 she was married, with an incredible train. We will have a Vera Wang gown here in this place for 2 days, January 15th and January 18th, valued at over $10,000. We invite you to come see our exhibit. We'll be here at the Anton Art Center through January 20th. Thank you for visiting.